I will give a quick introduction, and we have Tom Tango, who I think many of you are familiar with. Tom's the Senior Data Architect of Stats at MLB Advanced Media. He's also the co-author of the book, Playing the Percentages in Baseball. And Mike Petriello is a stats analyst for MLB Advanced Media, and he writes daily about Statcast and advanced statistics. And Daren Willman is the Director of Baseball Research and Development for MLB Advanced Media. And now I will just give it over to them.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, everybody. We are the team from Statcast. If you have any questions, please fill them out in the cards in the back, and we'll be happy to answer them afterwards. So what we want to do today, this is the third year. I think Daren and I have been up here in the second year for Tom. And we want to show you, a couple of the things that we brought out last year and how we're going to improve them, but we have a few new things to announce today. And there's a couple of things we are so very close to being ready with that are going to be out in the next couple of weeks. We're going to try to hit on like 13 different things here. So we're going to move briskly. And I think what you'll notice here too is, although the three of us are the ones that are up here, there are a lot of people who touch this. There are a lot of names you don't know, like Jason Bernard, for example, Andy Kim, Greg Kane, a whole bunch of other people who work on this. So there's a lot of people who are helping us out with all this. The first thing is, if you look back over the last 365 days, we put out a lot of new metrics. Catch probability and hit probability, I believe we first talked about here and at Sloan last year. Sprint speed, expected weighted on base, outs above average. These all worked out pretty well for us in year one, and they were always intended to be somewhat of a version one, and every single one of these either has been improved upon or will be improved upon in ways that we'll be able to get to in just a second. We also really started to try to use the power of the technology, especially in 3D tracking. You can see on the upper left here, that was the home run derby last year. And that was actually a live real-time tool on Daren's site that you could watch. You could really see the home runs being launched in ways that were never possible before. On the upper right, when we thought maybe the Red Sox would go after Giancarlo Stanton and everybody wanted to know if he would single-handedly tear down the Green Monster, we tried to look at a different way to visualize potential home runs. Forever it had been the top-down 2D version. Well, the 3D version is cool because, as we all know, walls matter. And that's the thing on the bottom as well. The Angels just changed their wall. And what was great is we did the data and we looked at what might have happened, and the increase was almost exactly what the physics had expected. Like Tom had made a guess, and it was pretty much almost right on. So the 3D stuff is what's really interesting to us, and that's the first new thing we're going to introduce today. This is from our friend and colleague, Eddie Elliott, really great visualization tool. So you may have seen me tweet this out. This is Max Scherzer from a randomly selected game. The red is his four-seam, and the green is his changeup. This is what the hitter sees, and you can see the trajectories and the motion. It's very different, so keep that in mind for a second. What this is showing is the various points that the hitter needs to make some decisions, and Tom can explain a little bit more about what these are.
All right, so these are our reaction points. The first one is what we call the recognition point, which is 1/10 of a second after the pitcher releases the ball. So that's like the first point at which the batter can try to figure something out. And then the commit point, which is 1/6 of a second prior to the pitch crossing the plate. So that's basically the bail point, the point of no return, where the batter has to decide, can he bail or not? And in between those two, so the white and the pink that you see, that's the decision zone. That's where the batter is actively trying to figure out what to do.
So what this is going to allow us to do, as everybody is talking about tunneling, and there's been a lot of places that have done really great work on tunneling, and we're hoping to be able to build on some of that. This is a Zach Greinke start from last year, just showing against right-handed pitchers. And what the pink is, as Tom said, that's 1/6 of a second prior to crossing the plate. That's where the hitter really needs to make a choice if he's swinging or not. And what you can see, and this is his average trajectories for that game, the curveball stands out. Obviously, it's got that hump at the front. But the four-seam and slider kind of are on the same path, and the two-seam and the changeup are kind of on the same path. And it's a really interesting way to visualize how these pitches come out in a similar way, but may not end up in the same way. And what's cool about this is that these aren't just pretty pictures. This is a tool that exists right now. And Daren is going to show you some of those things.
Okay, so building on top of what they were saying is what you're looking at here. This is Aroldis Chapman, and this is what we were just talking about. And this is live. You can pull up any picture right now. It goes back one calendar year, so we're only doing 2017 data right now, but 2018 will be available. So it's kind of cool as you can start to compare. So we can start surfing. So this is Aroldis Chapman. Let's compare him to, say, Jared Weaver. And you could tell, Jared Weaver throws slow. So versus Chapman, you can toggle back and forth. Well, the reaction time is noticeable. versus 100 and we'll say 84 mile an hour fastball. And so there's just a lot of different things you can do, options available on this. So like if you hover over, it'll give you the pitch, all the pitch metadata on the bottom right. This is Darvish, so this is an interesting one too. So what I did is I pulled up Darvish's slowest pitch last year. So every now and then he'll mix in, say, a 65 mile an hour curveball, but he also throws 95. So this just shows all the different reaction times a hitter kind of has to be ready for in any given at bat, just based off this reaction time here. So this is Clayton Kershaw. So this is another thing you can do. This is, since it's in three-dimensional space, we can see exactly what Clayton Kershaw would see facing the batter. And what you'll notice here, which is really cool, is he's switched up his release points. So these right here would be his release points colored by pitch type. And right here, he decided he was going to drop down and throw a curve to Matt Carpenter. And so there's just a ton of different views we can toggle from here. So up at the top right, there's different views. So we've defined them. So let's see. This is what Clayton Kershaw saw. This is what the catcher saw. This is what a right-hander batter would see. And it's all fully toggleable. So you can kind of just swivel around, decide what view you want to dissect best. And then you can do a dual screen. So let's compare two different games. So let's see here. Let's pick another game. Let's go. And you can see just if he's made adjustments during the season, if he's changing his release points. It's all interactive and it swivels with it. And so another thing you can do is up here, let's just look at purely on speed. And let's look at the spin rates. And these are all the outcomes, the various outcomes. And then down here, we have the various at-bats and like which pitches are which. So in this one, he threw a fastball, slider, fastball. You can drill down to individual plate appearances. So let's look at Harper, how he faced Harper in his, let's do this. Let's do Harper his first at-bat versus Harper his second at-bat. June 7th. So you can see if he's switching it up, maybe various pitch types. So the options are pretty much limitless. You can see anything, you can analyze it any which way.
Yeah, one thing I want to also point out here is when you look at the metadata on the bottom, so let's, for example, pull up, so this is Clayton Kershaw versus Bryce Harper, right? And you can move this around, take any viewpoint you want, which is really cool, and you can see how he attacked him, and you hover over it and you get everything that's listed on the bottom. So it's important to know that when you see the metadata, for example, this is a curveball. A lot of it's what you'd expect, right? Top three, the ball and strike count, how many pitches for the game, pitches and plate appearance, spin rate, all this kind of stuff. You'll notice the movement there is using gravity. I know this gets kind of in the weeds, but maybe not for this audience. A lot of the pitch movement stuff that's public has not used gravity. It's based on the hypothetical spinless pitch, which makes a ton of sense for a lot of reasons, but nobody can really comprehend what that means. So we're trying to get into what the batter actually sees with this. And, well, he sees that pitch breaking several feet. So that's how we're going to kind of go with it going forward. We're going to use some pitch movement charts. We're going to be able to say this guy has more break or 20% more rise, that kind of stuff. And that's really what you'll see here. So this is a pretty powerful tool, and it's out on the site right now. You can see the URL right here, baseballsavant.mlb.com/visuals/pitch3D. And as we said, Eddie Elliott, one of our colleagues, just put a ton of work into this, and there's really so much more we want to add to it. Right now, it's only per pitcher, right? But you might want to see, well, what kind of pitches does Joey Votto see? Maybe I want to see all the curveballs that Cody Bellinger saw in the World Series last year. That's not in there yet, but it will be, and there'll be more metrics too, because right now this is more a picture. It doesn't really tell you if this is good or bad, but we'll be able to get into some really cool tunneling metrics as well. This is really the first start, so we definitely encourage you to check it out and tweet us feedback, as we know that you will, because it'll mostly get improved when more eyeballs are looking at it, and we're really excited about that.
I think that's a good point that Mike is saying. Eddie spent so much time on it, and as soon as he showed it to us, Mike came back with 15 things he wanted to add. And so now just imagine other people are going to start looking at it. Eddie's going to be his plate is going to be full for the next 2 years.
Most of my job is annoying everybody with requests and feedback. And then also, as you see down here, you can do his overall season average too, right? Against righties, against lefties. Kershaw's obviously very similar. A lot of guys aren't. So this is exciting. Please play with us. Play with it and let us know, how you feel about it. So we could probably spend a whole hour just on that, but there are so many other things we want to get to. This is new data that's up right now, right? We're always looking to add new data out there, and catcher stuff has always been very interesting to us because forever it's really just been caught stealing percentage. We've always known it's not really on the catcher. The pitcher has a lot to do with this. So up right now at baseballsavant.com are leaderboards. There's arm strength for every catcher for the last 3 years, exchange time, pop time to second base and third base. And this really just gave me an excuse to use this Gary Sanchez gif because it just makes me very happy. So some of the stuff you'll be able to see. First, why does pop time matter? It's kind of noisy, right? We know there's a lot of stuff that goes into caught stealing percentage. It's not all on the catcher, but as pop time gets slower, caught stealing percentage gets lower. It's almost impossible to be at the high end of this on the bottom, have a pop time of 215 and have a good caught stealing percentage. It's barely possible. And as Tom noted, every 1/10 of a second of pop time this goes up changes the caught stealing rate by 10%. So it's obviously not a perfect correlation, but there is certainly some signal in there. And I think this is, it's interesting because scouts have always been able to measure this, and now it's public, which is great. These are the guys who are at the top of our list for this most recent year, pop time to second base. I don't think any of these names will be perfectly surprising. Hedges, obviously, Realmuto, these guys are really considered to be some of the best catchers. And for arm strength, we've been measuring that with the max effort throws, is what we call it, because it's very hard to know when a guy is trying. We don't want to include in the average just lobs back to the pitcher. Nobody cares about that. So what we do is we find the 90th percentile of his throws, and we take the top 10%, the average above that. Whole leaderboard is available at Baseball Savant. So what I find cool about this is you can see that there's different ways to get to the same result. So we have Gary Sanchez and Salvador Perez with the same pop time, 1.95 seconds to second base. It's above average. MLB average is 2.01 seconds. But they get there in different ways. Sanchez, as everybody knows, has the best throwing arm in baseball. His exchange, time getting the ball out of the glove, it's average. Ends up to an above average pop time. Sanchez is the other way. He's got a good arm, but not a great arm, but elite exchange. Nobody gets it out of his glove faster than he does. So the same result. Meanwhile, you can have someone with a cannon. Cameron Rupp has a very strong arm. It just takes him forever to get the ball out of his mitt, and that's a below average pop time. It should tell you something that the difference between great and terrible is 0.2 of a second. There's not a huge spread in catcher stuff, but that's all out there right now, so we're pretty excited about that. One update we wanted to give you, so we put out catch probability last year based on how much time and how much distance, and then later on the direction. It was pretty successful. We were really happy with the way that worked out, but we knew a flaw right away was that it didn't account for the wall. That's kind of important. So that was okay and a little frustrating. Now it's going to account for the wall. So Tom's going to explain in a second how that's going to work, but just to give you examples, these are two undeniably fantastic plays. And the numbers were okay. I mean, 52% is actually a pretty decent play, but you see a play like this and you want this to be fantastic. With the new update for wall balls, it's going to be fantastic. So now that Buxton play is only made 7% of the time. Now the Jackie Bradley play is only made a quarter of the time. So this will lead to some slight changes in outs above average on Baseball Savant. That's not quite up there yet, but it will be very soon. And Tom can explain a little bit about how we made this work.
So the idea is to always try to classify all these plays in some way so that you can group them and compare them to other like-minded plays. So in this particular case, we'd consider a wall ball anything where the ball landed within 8 feet of the wall. And we let it go as high as 8 feet high. Anything above that, if it's a base hit, we assume that no one could have caught the ball, so as to be fair to the fielder. So now once we're able to classify all those balls, now we can say these are wall balls, and we can start comparing them. And now we see a big difference, like Buxton play that you see there really allowed us to show that it was an outstanding catch as opposed to just a very good catch.
As it turns out, there's not actually a lot of these. We tracked almost 33,000 catches last year. 80% of them were just regular catches. The two blue ones there are saying whether it was a guy going back, which we give extra difficulty for, or someone going into the wall. And the red one is if you're going back and into the wall. Those are the most difficult. But when you compare and combine the two wall columns, it's only 5% of catches. It's not really a great amount of catches, but it matters, and it's going to help. So guys like Buxton and Billy Hamilton, I think, will be about plus 3 extra outs above average. Some guys will lose things because these are pulled out of the sample of the rest of them. But the point is really we're always trying to improve these metrics, based on what we see and based on the feedback that we get from everybody using them. So that's what's out there. And here's stuff we're working on. And some of the stuff we wanted so badly to be ready for today, but it's just going to take a little bit more time. So we can at least tease it, and you'll know that in the coming weeks and up, through the season, there's so much more stuff that we're going to have ready. This is my favorite one, I think, because everybody's been asking for this. I'm pretty sure when you came in for your interview, like the first day, this was like the first thing I asked you about. Could we do this? As you all know, Tom has been the inventor of fielding dependent pitching, which has been a pretty successful tool for many years. It's essentially the 3 true outcomes, right? It does not account for batted ball quality. Well, now we are considering batted ball quality. We have expected weighted on base. So that's what this is. This will be an ERA estimator that accounts for strikeouts and walks and batted ball quality. And if anybody wants to help us out with a name for this, we would definitely take it, because naming new metrics is just the worst. So we don't have a good name for it yet. It's not going to be SCERA. But I thought this was a really good example. You look at Craig Kimbrell. Fantastic year last year. Everybody would agree with that. His ERA and his FIP are essentially identical. John Doolittle also had a very good year last year, but not quite as good by ERA and by FIP. But by our ERA estimator, it's going to say that Doolittle was actually a little bit better than Kimbrell. You might wonder why. Kimbrell struck out like half the guys he faced. Doolittle was about 1/3, I think, so advantage Kimbrell. However, the expected weighted on base actually favored Doolittle, and I've listed some reasons here why that is. He had the highest pop-up rate in baseball. Pop-ups are great if you're a pitcher. He had the lowest hard hit rate in baseball, so he got a ton of weak contact. All that stuff matters. If hitters were actually able to make contact with Kimbrell, they hit it hard. He had the highest average exit velocity against, the 5th highest hard hit, and left on base percentage isn't really a Statcast metric, but it just goes to show that that ERA was maybe a little artificially low. So the point here is not to say that Kimbrell isn't great, because he absolutely was, but Doolittle was great in different ways in limiting hard contact, and we know how much that matters in addition to just getting strikeouts. So this is going to be something we'll have ready within the next couple weeks, and I think people will get a lot of use for it, because I think I get asked about this more than just about anything else we do. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
So the new player pages. So on Baseball Savant, we're developing new player pages, and we're trying to integrate a lot of this new Statcast stuff. So one of the key additions will be 3-dimensional trajectories for the batted balls. If you look on the top left, Chris Bryant's spray chart. And what we're showing here is the field and all his home runs. I think that's Citi Field that we used. But you'll be able to select any stadium, and you'll be able to, the fence will be there. So it'll be a 3D model of the actual fence. So you'll be able to pull up a variety of different views. You'll be able to pull up any player, look at all their home runs and their trajectories, and see if particular home runs would have gone out, say, at Fenway, similar to what we did, what Mike did with Stanton. You could pull up any player, and so the possibilities are really cool. So hopefully this year we're going to start, well, really soon, we're going to start rolling out some of these 3D trajectories of batted balls. Another cool thing is we're working on these new updated pitch charts. So if you look at the middle, we're going to try to implement some natural language things. So you can pull up a player, and we'll give you some, what they throw, what their repertoire is it successful? And then on the top right, we're going to have some new visuals where it shows where certain players stand versus league average based off their velocity. And another thing we're going to be adding is, if you look on the bottom right, those are his Statcast metrics. So right now it's really difficult to pull up Statcast metrics year to year, similar to like you would on like a player page with batting average and ERA. We're going to be integrating these in, and then we're going to try to give you some context. Like, is this good? So we'll highlight it green. Is this bad? We'll highlight it red. In coordination with this, I'm also going to be taking ownership of the MLB.com player pages. So we're hoping to integrate better between Savant and MLB.com. There's no reason we shouldn't be. So we're going to run a lot of tests on the Savant player pages. We're going to A/B test them. We're going to find out what people like based off these A/B tests. And we're going to start integrating some of these functions into the MLB.com player pages based off what our analytics say people are looking at most on the site. And so we're going to try to make Statcast a first-class citizen on MLB.com player pages, which I think we have some Statcast on there, but now that we have sprint speed and we have these various metrics, we need to contextualize them and start showing them, like, why is this player good? And is his sprint speed, how does he rate versus other second basemen or things like that? Another thing that I've been working on is, this isn't really Statcast related, but if you're familiar with my site, MLBfarm.com, that's going to be moved under the MLB.com umbrella, and it's going to have a very similar search to the Statcast search, but you'll be able to basically run queries versus any minor league system, draft year, are they an MLB.com prospect, and you'll be able to, at a very granular level, pull out statistics, WOBA, batting average, slugging percentage, and so it's actually a very powerful tool that should be hopefully out next week. I don't want to make any promises, but it's going to be really cool.
What you also see on the right is something I can't wait to happen. It's just new leaderboards, right? You'll be able to easily get to expected weighted on base, expected batting average, all the stuff that you need to do these custom queries for right now on Savant. The whole idea is to make it so much easier for people to get to. Speaking of which, this is something, as you can see, it's almost done because it's a screenshot, but it's not quite ready yet. Again, something very soon. Shift tracking and positioning, right? And this is something that people have always been very interested in. You can see on the left, for example, that is a heat map of the Brewers. And for example, I think that was against right-handed hitters. Ryan Braun in left field just refused to move a muscle at all. But if you were to look at, I think, like the Astros, and that's partially because of the ballpark, you see their left fielders all over the place. So pictures are cool, and you'll be able to make those pictures, but also data is important as well. And what you're going to be able to do, and this is just step one of it, is to look at how many times a team shifted. And at first, it's just going to be a shift binary, right? A shift or not a shift, so that'll be 3 or 4 infielders to one side of the base. We're eventually going to break it down a little further, extreme shifts and strategic shifts, and all the different kinds that you can think of. And as you can see here, we've got this sorted by lefties and righties, and you can see who shifts the most. Unsurprisingly, the Astros do. This is a little bit different from what's out there publicly now because it's not just on batted balls. We track shifts or not shifts on every pitch. And the way this is laid out, it's called plate appearances. It's slightly misleading because it's really times to the plate, so like a caught stealing counts. It's close enough. And we track that on every pitch too. It turns out it's almost exactly the same numbers. Now what I find interesting here, and I know this is going to just confuse the hell out of everybody, but not the smart people in this room. If you look at these columns here, the SWOBA and NOWOBA, what that means is weighted on base against with the shift on and without the shift on. And if you look at some of these, you're going to notice that weighted on base with the shift on, in many cases, is much, much higher than without the shift on. And I think people are going to see that and they're going to say to themselves, oh, the shift doesn't work. You should never use it. Now, we know that's not true, and that's mostly because you really have to look at the identity of the hitters who are being shifted against, as Tom will explain.
All right. The easiest example is David Ortiz. If, let's say, only David Ortiz was being shifted on, and let's say without the shift, his WOBA was 430, and with the shift, it's 390, then that's a great success. But if you only look at the team totals, you'll see 390, and suddenly it looks like it's a terrible idea. So it's very, very important that you have to take it within context. You got to know who the batter is.
If you want to know how close this was to being live, we decided not to push it like 3 hours ago. Like it's that close to being ready. The second thing that you'll be able to do here is look at positions. This is also a screenshot, right? This is a live tool that you'll be able to hover over and get all this data. So for example, this is showing third baseman against lefties with the shift on and not holding a runner on first base. As you can see, these guys are absolutely all over the place. I think the guy furthest to the left was, I want to say, Brandon Phillips maybe, who played a little bit of third. You'll be able to do this zoomed in view for any position. There's going to be a couple of ways to slice and dice it, versus righties and lefties, at the shift on, first base, all this kind of stuff. And there's going to be some data that goes along with it. And as you can see here, you'll be able to show distance, which is just feet from home. Angle, and so you'll need to know left to right. So negative 45 is to the left field line, plus 45 to the right field line. And we're trying to express a way, kind of like the Ryan Braun example I showed before, how often are guys actually moving around, or are they just staying static? So we'll be able to show things like he is close to his midpoint this % of the time, or far away from his midpoint this percentage of the time. So this is going to be, I think, pretty cool because you've never really been able to do this outside of just bat and ball stuff. And we know that if you're really going to try to do analysis on the shift, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be on every plate appearance, on every pitch. So this is, again, very, very close to being ready.
And we're going to integrate this into the Statcast search tool, so you'll be able to slice it and dice it however you want. So say you want to see batting average with the shift on, you'll be able to quickly search that and break it down however you want.
This is the one everybody, I think, has been asking about, and I'm very happy to let Tom talk about it.
So this has been an off-season project, and it's going to be an ongoing project. But just to let you know how things are shaping up, the way to look at infield defense, every player has his starting point on every play. And on the left, you simply see the frequency of the batted balls that land in front of the infielder. So those blocks, each line is 30 feet, so it's 15 by 30 feet. So you can see that there's a lot of balls that are landing 60 to 90 feet in front of him. And then it spreads out the closer it is to him. And then the conversion rate is how often he converts it into an out. So again, here you see within that specific slice directly at the fielder, he has a high conversion rate to make an out. And the farther out it is, then the less chance he has to make an out. One more, Mike. So that's for balls hit in front. So for balls that are hit at or behind him, it's what we refer to as the impact point. So the point where it passes or would have passed him. And if you look at the hockey goalie one, we're going to show the frequency as to how often the balls were hit in that place, as well as how often he converted into an out. And then we'll be able to merge the two into a quasi 3D image like you see at the bottom with the catcher. So you see like that becomes his opportunity space, the balls that land in front, and then the impact point when it crosses his plane. And we'll be able to show both, how often plays are there and how often he'll convert into an out. And that's just the basics. The basics takes like a while just to get a hold of. Outfield defense was a lot more straightforward because it was all about how much time you had and how far you had to go. And so there was that one slice for outfield where the fielder's talent came into play. Everything else is noise, so like 95% of the outfield plays are noise. But for infield defense, we have extra considerations. We have to know the launch speed, launch angle, the landing spot of the ball relative to where the fielder started, where the fielder was to begin with, the batting hand of the batters, as well as the park. So there's a lot of things to be concerned about, and we'll address them one at a time.
I have seen a very early, preliminary, untested, unvetted version of the outcome of this, and I don't think Statcast is going to save Eric Hosmer, unfortunately. It's not looking good. This is another example of a friend and a colleague of ours. So somewhere out here is Travis Peterson, who is one of our data analysts, and he is actually going to do an entire deep dive on our hit probability, augmenting it with hit direction and sprint speed, right? So improving the model and also accounting for speed. That's 8:30 on Sunday morning. I know it's early, but I've seen this presentation. It's really good, and you should definitely check it out for a couple reasons. One is, we have seen this in action for a year, and we've learned a lot, and we want to update the model and make sure that the model actually reflects reality as best we can. But we also know that speed matters, right? Expected weighted on base is quality of contact and amount of contact. But if you're really fast, you're going to beat out, infield hits. Miguel Cabrera is never going to do that. He's never going to turn a single into a double. So that all matters, and that is what Travis is going to do. And I definitely encourage you to come check it out. And Tom's going to explain a little bit about the model here.
Right. So the blue line is the current model, essentially making no distinction of the sprint speed of the batter. So regardless of how fast you are, it simply treats a Miguel Cabrera batted ball to the ground the same as it would to Byron Buxton. But the orange line, that's their actual performance. So you can see that sprint speed makes an enormous difference for this segment of balls, which is topped or weakly hit balls. So now Travis included this in his augmented version, and now he's better able to represent the sprint speed as part of the hit probability model. And you can see how well it matches up.
So again, Travis will go through this in great detail, but the point is, obviously, we're always trying to improve these models rather than just leaving them alone as data piles up. As a quick example, you can see how this might help some of the speedier guys. Altuve, Hamilton, these guys will gain 10, 12, 15 or so points of weighted on base. So it's not going to actually equal what they came up with. I think that's to be expected, but it's going to make it a little bit closer and show that speed is a skill that Hamilton has and say Albert Pujols does not have. Speaking of speed, I think this is really interesting. I'm excited to hear Tom talk about this.
So one of the interesting things that we have with Statcast is frame-by-frame data. So we're able to take that and now start converting it into speed values at particular points of the run. So in this particular case, we're looking at mostly speedsters, except for the bottom two lines, which is Pujols and McCann, just so you can see what it looks like. So that's their sprint speed as they're running. And Byron Buxton, he's the blue line, the Twins. You can see that his sprint speed is higher than anybody else's. And he's got the out-of-the-gate speed. Trey Turner, who is fast, he's the green line, and you can see he actually catches up to Buxton in terms of speed, but he doesn't get out of the gate as well as Buxton or even Hamilton. So this is a good way to look at speed in its entirety rather than just saying Turner is fast, which everybody knows, but there's other parts to running that's required. So another way to look at it is just to lay it out in terms of every 0.1 seconds, what's everybody's speed. And now we can segment it into three different sections. One is their out of the gate, which is their explosiveness, the acceleration phase, which is the burst or the boost of the speed, and then it's their regular running speed. So DeShields, for example, he's as quick as Buxton out of the gate. He's able to run 16 feet in the first second. So we'll be able to come up with these leaderboards for every runner.
So the end result, right, is we'll break this down into a couple different things. We'll have sprint speed, explosiveness, boost, however we're going to name it. Just getting me the idea that sprint speed is very cool, but there's more to running than that. Now we're going to do something. We're going to bring up one of our former Statcast interns, Julia, over here, who just recently got hired by the Cardinals. She's going to start as soon as she graduates, which makes me feel ancient.
Not that old.
One of the things Julia worked on for us was she did a sacrifice fly decision-making model, right? And as you know Julia at all, Bartolo Colon is going to be involved in this. So we're going to show some of this, and Julia's going to kind of explain to us how it works. First, I'm going to play the video here, Julia. Here's a sac fly. So the question Julia's going to help us answer is, was it a good decision or a bad decision for that base runner to test the arm?
Yeah, so essentially, I primarily worked on this with Tom, but when we first started looking at this, Tom had marked out, I think, probably like 50 or 60 model type plays where the distance, well, the time difference between the runner and the outfielder's throw getting home was within half a second, and I classified those as close plays. So this didn't exactly fall within that category because the throw minus the runner was 0.7, but I was at this game, and that play actually resulted in a challenge, so I thought it would be like a little interesting thing to see, like what would happen. So we have Cespedes in the outfield who had an arm strike of 96 on that play, which is, I think that was like the 87th percentile for throw that year, so like a decent throw. And for these types of plays, we're assuming that they're giving a high effort just because those outfielders really do want to throw those runners out in that type of situation. And then we developed a new metric called exchange distance, which is the distance they cover on the ground. Which really helped us fully complete our model. So the sacrifice fly model, at least for the outfielder standpoint, we had exchange distance, which is the distance the distance that the fielder physically covered on the ground plus the throw distance from the flight path of the ball. His exchange time, the time as we discussed earlier, where they're holding the ball, his was 0.9. I believe league average is about 0.7, and his exchange distance was 10 feet, which is I think around league average. Then LeMahieu he looked like he was jogging a little bit on that play, but that's actually around league average, I believe. Isn't 4.2 league average for time to home? Yeah, so the hit distance on that play was 286 feet, which is like an okay hit. The throw time to home, based upon our estimate, was 3.5 seconds. And obviously the time to home was 4.2. Throw minus runner was 0.7. So the runner time to home was 4.2, so we called that the time that Cespedes had to make that play, accounting for the throw and his exchange. So basically we started to calculate how much Cespedes could do, how far out he could be to fully utilize all those 4.2 seconds to have an ideal type situation where the runner and the ball got to home plate at exactly the same time. So we calculated that to be 308 feet, which gave Cespedes an excess distance of 22 feet, meaning he could have been 22 feet farther out in the outfield and still have made that play. So this is what it would look like on a broadcast. So the red zone is obviously pretty close to the infield, and that is marked as a zone where the runner really shouldn't be going. Yellow zone is kind of like the excitement zone where it's close on both sides. It's harder to tell, and then the green zone is pretty much the runner's going to be safe, and it's a safe bet for them to go.
Here's your favorite one.
Yeah, so if anyone knows me, you know how much I love Bartolo Colon. And I came up with a hypothetical case. I said, what if we do Bartolo Colon against Bartolo Colon? And there's not really that much like data on him because he doesn't run that much. But Corey Schwartz, our VP, came up with the idea. He said, what if we take peak Bartolo Colon, outfielder Bartolo Colon, and match him up with peak base runner Bartolo Colon? So that's what we did. So he actually threw, I think it was 2 pitches last year that were 93 miles per hour, which is very fast for Bartolo. And his fielder sprint speed was a whole 23.7 feet per second. The league average is 27, but that's Bartolo's speed right there. So he's a little quick, even in his old age. And then we didn't have any exchange data for Bartolo because obviously he's a pitcher, so we just used the league averages for those. Use his fielder sprint speed and runner sprint speed as the same. And Bartolo, with his blazing fast sprint speed, would be projected to go home in about just over 4.5 seconds. So outfielder Bartolo Colon could be 340 feet away and still throw out base runner Bartolo Colon.
So I just want to ask her, 340 feet away in some parks is a home run.
Yeah.
In some places. So what you're saying is he'd have to actually be in the bleachers.
Yeah. Before we had cleaned up the model, like preliminary testing, because I was thinking about this like from the jump. Like I needed to put Bartolo into it right away, and I was getting some numbers that were like 550 feet. I was like, something is wrong here, but like it might actually be like that. Like who really knows?
Thank you, Julia. That was perfect. A few more things, and then we're going to take some questions. If you have any other questions, please on the cards, and Mark will bring them up.
So this is another thing that we're thinking for broadcast. So taking for granted that the runner did attempt to steal or will attempt to steal, based on his lead, the identity of the pitcher, the identity of the catcher, as he's moving to take his lead, we can then show his success rate in stealing a base. So here we're showing it as blue to red, but we could show it any way we'd need to, which means that we could even show it as soon as he's touching first base. So we don't even have to wait for him to take a 10 or 12-foot lead. As he's moving foot to foot, we'll be able to show those percentages go up.
This is a percentage of success or of attempt?
Of success. So this is given that he is expected to try to steal. So this is another one that we're playing around with. We'll play around with a lot of stuff here. But eventually all these things that we play with, we want it to be on Savant and on the player pages. So here it's Odor, who's a notorious pull hitter. And you can see based on the black line, that's how much he pulls the ball. So minus 45 means it's a dead pull. A 0 means straight away. And that's when they're not shifting him. But when they do shift him, his approach alters. So he doesn't pull as much. So it's still not the same as league average. The league average is that light line that you see. But you can see that there is some sort of response by the batter in terms of seeing the shift. So it's just a general tendency for him to pull or not pull. He won't be able to, no batter will be able to select the particular spray direction to choose.
I'm going to read this question here because any question that ends with apologies to Cespedes Barbecue is definitely going to get asked here. A suggestion for the name of the ERA with the batted ball quality, BBQ. That's not even a question. I just love that.
Yeah.
We could. He has a 3.20 BBQ.
I love it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Tom, this one I'm going to direct you here. With the pitch trajectory graphics, do you think that this is something that can be done using only trackman data?
Right, so the radar data is what drives those pitch trajectories that you saw. So we're able to capture the full flight of the path, which is then converted into a polynomial equation. Now that we have the polynomial, we can now pick out any point we want along that line.
So yes.
Yes.
Okay. Will the Statcast ERA be adjusted to league average for a stat similar to ERA minus? And let's start with that one first. There's an and also.
Yeah,
yes.
we can do it.
I think we'd have to, because we're always trying to put this stuff in context, right? So, if you had a 75 ERA minus, I mean, that helps you know it's on a scale of 100. So we're going to try to obviously do the same kind of thing. And will it be compared to replacement level to create a Statcast pitcher's wins above replacement?
From my standpoint, the wins above replacement is just years down the road. I prefer looking at everything as specific tools. This is what Statcast really is, that we can jump in and look at Delino DeShields, look at his explosiveness speed. I'd much rather know that than to know is Altuve an 8.1 or 8.3 WAR player. Conversationally, broadcast-wise, we're not going to show WAR. No one's really interested in that, but they would be interested to see that DeShields is the most explosive runner in the league.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's a scouting tool, really.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. That's our show. Thank you, everybody.